Good morning, guys. It is day 37 of Flippin Live. I'm Andrew from 510 Books, and it is a Monday, June 8th, 2020. And I'm glad to see some people on here, and hello to the people who are going to watch this in the future. I wanted to talk about bulk book business. So let's get started.
Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live. We're gonna strive, we're here to learn and gonna earn. Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live.
Good morning, guys. I started reselling books back in 2014, strictly on Amazon, strictly FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, strictly one-man show, and I was brand new to it, and I slowly got into it, and over a few years, I ended up getting into bulk, but I started initially reselling, my sources were typical places, the traditional places such as thrift stores and estate sales and garage sales and things like that. And library sales, excuse me. And then I stumbled upon some bulk sources and bought my first Gaylord, I believe, back in 2000. 14, so maybe like 16 or so. And it was a bad buy, and I learned a lot from it. It was actually a Gaylord of books from a thrift store, but it ended up that these were really just not great books. They essentially had already gone through their donations and tossed all of these books into a Gaylord, and then were looking for a sucker to just pick them up. They already have somebody there who goes through the books and decides, oh, this looks like something we could sell, on the shelves in the bookstore. And I don't know if they sold online. I don't think so, but who knows? And then they would just toss the rest of them into, a traditional size Gaylord. And I found them, the ad they had posted. I don't know if it was Craigslist or wherever back then, 4 years ago, whatever it was. And so I rented a truck and I drove down there a good ways, probably 30 plus miles away from my house. And I had them put it in the truck. There's a video of me going through it on YouTube on my channel. And I ended up realizing really quickly that the books were not great for Amazon sale. And I think I don't know how many I found exactly. I'd have to look at the video, but it wasn't very many. It wasn't worth the money I put into not only the Gaylord, but also into renting the truck and paying for gas and driving all the way down there in traffic and driving back. And then I was not aware of how to deal with duds at that point. So, excuse me. Wow, I was only selling on Amazon, and I don't believe I was doing merchant fulfilled at that point. And if I was at all, it was very small. And I was not doing eBay, and I certainly wasn't doing any sort of local sales on, Facebook Marketplace, that type of stuff, OfferUp, whatever it may be. So I quickly realized that was a bad source, although I did not give up on looking for another bulk source. So anyway, what I ended up doing was I kept the ones to resell on Amazon and pulled some out for my kids, and then the rest I just donated to a Goodwill, a big donation, but after I'd taken everything out of the Gaylord. But anyway, I ended up finding another source and getting into that, into Gaylords of books. Now, there are a lot of reasons why I didn't end up scaling up. I'll go into the components of a bulk book business, and I wanted to use the example of one of the largest not only the U.S. but I think in the world. They also claim to be the largest used bookseller. Um, Thrift Books. I found this interesting podcast interview of the CEO of Thrift Books, and this is from 2019, where they have a conversation with him about the business and about their history and how they run it and all that stuff. And I'll dive into that in a second. So basically, you can start out as a one person reselling business, and then if you want to ramp it up, if you want to get into bulk books, you can do that. There's just a lot of moving components that you have to consider and plan out ahead of time, and think about, if it's something that you really truly do want to do. So that's why I wanted to compare starting one to Thrift Books, which is just ginormous, huge used bookseller on Amazon and just online. So Thrift Books started in 2003, like a lot of booksellers, right? Just and the guy even says it in the podcast episode that loading up the trunk of their car to go to the post office to ship off books that's sold online. Excuse me. Wow. So think about 2003. It just seems like ages ago in terms of technology and online presence. YouTube had not even started yet. YouTube was started in essentially, I think, 2006 or so, 2005, 2006. Amazon, of course, has been around since the 90s, so they had already been around for not quite 10 years. I think they started in 95, if I'm correct here. So what would that be? About 8 years they were already in. And I guess soon after Thrift Books started, that Amazon started opening up their API so that third-party sellers could tap into that and start listing books on Amazon for sale as fulfilled by merchant fulfilled. This was before FBA, so FBA didn't start until 2007. Ira's here. Good morning. Thank you for your time. No problem, Ira. I appreciate you watching on this Monday morning. And so they started tapping into that and started very small, just like all of us, right? Started very small and over the years grew. And so that's this interview was from 2019, but that was 17 years ago from today when they started. And they slowly started to build up the business. And basically, I don't know all the steps in between. He didn't go into great detail about that, but just some numbers for where they are right now. And these are numbers from, because the interview was from like mid 2019. So these are like 2018 numbers. So these numbers may have grown. They may be the same. So currently, Thrift Books, they went from, just small potatoes to now they have actually 10 warehouses throughout the U.S., throughout the country. Similar to Amazon, the reason why they have 10 is because they have grown so much, but also the reason why they're not all just in one area and they're spread out throughout the country is that when a book sells, they want to have locations like Amazon, similar to why shipments end up being being split sometimes. My English is slipping away here. Similar to when you do an FBA shipment and they split, it'll split maybe one or two or three ways sometimes, is because they want books to go to certain regions of the country so that when they fulfill those, they can get it to the customer quicker. So it's the same idea with Thrift Books. They have 10 big warehouses of books, and so when a book sells, they have multiple copies of books. So they'll have a copy in this region of the country, in this region, et cetera, so that they can ship it out quicker not ship it out quicker, but so that it'll arrive quicker, ideally, to the customer. So they have 10 warehouses, 10, and these are gigantic warehouses. I don't know if I can find any photos. Let's see. Let's see. Here we go. Let's see what this is. Here, I will show you a photo that I just found on. Right now, it's just one photo. Let me share the screen. That is a small photo, huh? Well, so here is how Thrift Books delivers value with the help of employees and supply chain automation. Okay, Thrift Book operates 8 fulfillment centers. So when is this from? Oh, okay. I don't know this says 8 in the podcast interview. It said 10. So look at how gigantic this is. So that's an example of a Thrift Books warehouse. As you can see, it's similar to a Amazon warehouse of books, and they've got I don't know how many shelves, 5, 6. They got all of the top here, and it just goes way, and who knows how much further it goes. You can see all the Gaylords over here and around the edges, and yeah. So anyway, we can get an idea there of how gigantic these warehouses are. And in the podcast episode, in the interview, that said there were 10. So anyway, 8, 10, whatever. And then according to the episode, the CEO said they have 900 employees, 900 throughout, all the warehouses. So that's a lot. And they said in 2018, they actually they sold around 25 million books through all of their channels, all of their warehouses, all their presence online. So again, I'm comparing you starting as, or me starting as, me representing you starting as a reseller, doing your own thing the traditional way, and then getting into bulk, and then deciding, do I really want to just keep it to myself, just do it myself, or do I want to expand? So there, compared to someone like Thrift Books, where they built that up over the years. It was not like within a year they went from doing it by myself to having a bunch of big, gigantic warehouses. I mean, that took, years and years to build up. But it's an example of going from, picking up some books at the thrift store and sending them into Amazon or listing them on Amazon or whatever, to over time growing, expanding, learning, adapting, evolving to be, in their example, to be ginormous, gigantic, massive. That's just the far end of the spectrum, but is an example of where someone can go with this business. They just decided to go to the extreme. So do the math. If they sell around 25 million books a year in 2018, if you divide that by 365 days in a year, guess how many that is a day? I did the math. So if it was exactly 25 million, which clearly it's not, but just a simple example, that would break down to 68,493 books a day that they sold. A day. So thankfully for them, they're spread throughout the whole, or they had, those sales were spread out through those 10 warehouses. And if you break that down, that's less than 10,000 books sold per warehouse. I'm a bit of a weirdo with the numbers, so let's see, 68,493. Yeah, so that's about 6,800 a day in one warehouse. So imagine you work in a warehouse, or you run a warehouse where there's 1,600 book sales a day, every single day. It's going to fluctuate, sometimes more, sometimes less, in that one warehouse. So imagine the amount of people that takes to pull those books. That means you probably have to have dozens of people, going through the stacks and grabbing the books, and then bringing them back to the shipping station where they have people who ship them just all day. And they probably have to have a bunch of different shippers to manage that. So you can imagine what that is like. Let's see. Oh, Thrift Book careers. Look at that. Sorry, I'm looking for more pictures. Here, let me show you this. This is that's moving quick. So it says, we are Thrift Books, and here's all the, look at that, processing center roles. Look at this. Look, bagging them up. Look look at all what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 8 shelves. So look at this. And then here it looks like they are, I don't know what they're doing, but so shipping, shelving, sorting, receiving, department lead. So look at all the different, that's a little dizzying. Anyway, the different, this is not a video or an ad for Thrift Books, but just as an example of, I'm going to take this off because that's going to bother me, is an example of such a big, operation. So, so imagine, selling that amount of books. The guy said, the CEO said they get 150 truckloads, I believe he said, a week throughout all of their warehouses, because in the warehouse, clearly they're not just, they do everything in the warehouse, right? They receive the books, sort them, scan them, list them, shelve them, pull them, ship them, etc. Right? So they do everything in the warehouse. So 150 truckloads of books a week. There's roughly 46 to 52 Gaylords on a truckload. So do the math on that. Imagine that a week. And he said that in 2018, they had $150 million in sales just in a 12-month period. So now, interestingly, that's a ridiculous amount, but interestingly, or at least to me, hello, Brenda. Good morning. Thank you for showing up, for participating. Interestingly, he talked about how they their sales are actually, it used to be exclusively on Amazon when they started, and for a very long time. But over the years, they decided to start selling in other channels. So they sell through other websites, but they started their own, as you probably know, thriftbooks.com. And so he said the previous 5 years, they had gone from mostly doing Amazon to building out their website and slowly starting to sell more and more on thriftbooks.com until now, or at least in 2019, he said that less than half of their sales are through Amazon, and more than half are through their actual domain, thriftbooks.com. Let's see. Yeah. So that's crazy, when you think about it. I mean, I've never gone to thriftbooks.com to buy books. Do you know anybody that's bought books on the domain thriftbooks.com? I didn't even know there were that many people doing that, but apparently they figured out a way to market that and to, traditional marketing online and whatnot, but they figured out a way to position themselves as an alternative to people just going directly on Amazon, which is crazy when you think about it, because Amazon is such when I think of used books online, buying used books, inexpensive used books online, I think of going to Amazon. But somehow, through advertising and through just, promoting their website, they've been able to do that, which probably makes them more money because they don't have to deal with all the fees on Amazon, and they can keep everything in-house, or at least a big chunk of their reselling business in-house. So that's interesting. They also have proprietary, which is not surprising, algorithms or software for scanning and deciding, whether to sell a book. Because, as you get in loads and loads of books, you have workers who scan them. So he said the process, which makes sense, right? They get the loads in, and they have people who sort, first of all, before they even get to scanning. Because they're getting, a lot of what they're getting probably is super raw. Like it has a lot of trash in there, a lot of destroyed books, a lot of crap, basically. So they have to have someone who goes through it, and then they probably have conveyor belts, and then the good books, the ones that are even worth scanning, are sent down or worth looking up. And they also, just so you know, from, if you're interested in getting into bulk selling, just so you know that they also do, for non-barcoded books, they also have people who actually look up those books by typing in the ISBN or manually looking up books. So they do take the time to do that because apparently they've realized or know that it's profitable to spend money on labor for people to type in ISBNs and look up things manually, because there is money in those books, at least some of those books, or enough of those books for that to make sense for them. Because think about the amount of labor. You have someone there, so there's someone who's scanning really quick, and then someone else, I assume, a different person, I don't know. I would think it'd be a different person. I would think they'd want to have someone dedicated to just scanning all day. And then someone who they send off the non-scannable books. They don't have barcodes, and they type in the ISBN real quick into their software, and it just tells them immediately whether it's a book they want to sell online or not. And then they will recycle a ton of books a year. They give away a lot of books apparently, to organizations and that type of thing. And I don't know if, I assume they sell on eBay. I'm sure they do. And yeah, so anyway, so that's an example of a gigantic, organization on the other level. I mean, on the other end of the spectrum of a bulk business. Now, I want to show you an example. There's an Instagram page of a person in, Florida who has a bulk business on a much smaller scale, where he's got a handful of employees, but he has a warehouse. He's got, going through a lot of pallets of books a day, gaylords of books a day. And he seems to be wanting to grow it, much bigger. So I can show you some photos and videos of that. But before that, I wanted to dive into, what to consider, because I have come to this point and I've clearly not decided to go big, or beyond myself yet, but I'm getting there. So if you want to start your own, there's a lot of things to consider, right? So probably the easiest thing, which I know a lot of people, if they haven't found a source yet, would say it's not easy, but there are books everywhere. You just gotta, sometimes get lucky, and sometimes just hustle, and talk to a lot of people and make some phone calls or meet people, or just steadily look for them online. But finding a source should be the least of your problems. A steady source of books, quality books, gaylords of books, right? You've got to find that if you're going to go into bulk books. There's got to be a way to consistently get books, week in and week out, so that as you grow up or grow your bulk business, and if you start, hiring people, and go beyond yourself, that you have, and you're investing money and time into it, that you make sure that you're always having new, fresh loads of books coming in. So you need that. You of course need space for this. So when I started, it was just out of my house, and when I got into bulk, I actually put, I actually had, books, or my first Gaylord of books was in a rented truck. My second one was four Gaylords in a rented truck. And then I decided, oh, okay, this is a good source. I like them. The same source that I still am with today. And I decided to get a small storage unit, one that has a roll-up door that you can just drive right up to and park in front of. And I could fit, I think I could fit as many as like 6 Gaylords, but I would fit about 5, so I'd have space to sort. And that's how I started by myself, getting into bulk books. So the first major hurdle I ran into, was how to deal with all of the non-sellable books, the ones I could not sell on Amazon. That became a major problem, and which is why I never ramped it up. One of the big reasons why I never ramped it up, was because I didn't know how to deal with all the duds. So, you've really got to figure out, well, okay. So storage unit, right? You can start with a storage unit, and then, if you outgrow that, you can go into a smaller warehouse. I highly recommend a warehouse if you can afford it, if you can find one, because, a warehouse has things like, hopefully good lighting, or great lighting, has, higher ceilings, has electrical outlets, has an address that you can receive deliveries to, or receive mail, or whatever it may be. You can get, internet in there. So all kinds of things that you can't, excuse me, whoa, sorry, you can't necessarily do within a storage unit. I know the storage unit that I had, there were no electrical outlets. The lighting was not very good. The ceiling was low. And the units are not, I mean, I had a long unit, so I could fit up to 10 gaylords in there. But, they're not very wide. They did have another larger unit that had a much higher ceiling and was wider. And that was more expensive. The one I had was like 360 some dollars a month. I think those other ones were like 500. So it is cheaper, right? It is a good way to start. But you have to consider, if you're going to go big, if you're going to be buying truckloads of uh, gaylords of books, which could be as many as 50 gaylords, you're going to need the space, right? And so also you're going to need a pallet jack and or a forklift. Pallet jack just goes underneath the pallet, and then you lift it up and you can move it around easily, even though it weighs a ton. So 800 to 1,000 books weigh a lot, so you're not going to move that around on your own. You're going to have a pallet jack or a forklift. So forklifts are a whole nother thing. You can get a used pallet jack for 50, 60, 70 bucks. A new one for maybe 150 bucks, 200, depending on how fancy you want to get or how nice you want it to be. But there's plenty of used ones around there for to find out there. Now, a forklift is a whole different thing. You're going to probably have to spend over 1,000 bucks for a forklift, even a used one, I would assume. I don't know. I mean, maybe less than. No, it seems like a decent forklift is going to cost, depending on which one you get, is probably going to run you over 1,000 bucks or so. So, oh, Brenda says I was in a storage unit when I first watched you. Yeah, I know. I I got a warehouse space end of last year in October. So I was in the warehouse. I was in a small storage unit for a while, and then I moved into a bigger storage unit for another year or so, and then I had been looking for a warehouse space near my house, and I had found a couple, but they were a little too expensive. And then I just found this one that I'm in now, where it's the right price, the right location. The lease is not it's not a long term lease. It's good, and it makes sense for me to be in there and have my warehouse sale there. So yeah, I mean, it's got to make sense. All those things need to start falling into place. So you need a bulk source, you need a warehouse, or a storage unit to start. You don't necessarily need a warehouse, but you're going to need a pallet jack or a forklift. I'm talking if you're going to go big, right? If you're going to be getting lots and lots, over like 10, 12, 20 gaylords at a time, if not a whole truckload, you're going to need to be able to move those around. And sometimes you're going to need to stack one gaylord on top of the other, so you can double stack them and have enough space, assuming you have enough space. But if you double stack them, then you can create more space, right? Instead of just having 10 in a row, you can have 20 in a row by stacking them one on top of each other. So I've never used a forklift, so that's something you've got to be really careful with. You've got to learn how to use a forklift, or you have to hire somebody who knows how to use a forklift. I'm sure there's lots of things to consider when it comes to that type of thing, because you're dealing with, really heavy items, and you have to be careful. So then you've got to have all that in place, and you can work up to it. You don't have to just suddenly get a warehouse and get a forklift. I mean, you can work up to it, right? The best way is to grow into a new space. Start small in your house, go to a storage unit, and then go into a warehouse, and then maybe a bigger warehouse, etc. So you don't want to unless you have the money and you're confident, that you can make it work, you can just open a warehouse. But I like the idea of growing into it, and you learn a lot that way as well. So that's what I did, and I'm continuing to try to grow. And the only reason, the warehouse made sense for me to grow into it. I just was growing out of my storage unit, and I wanted to do a local sale, and it's proven that it has been worth it. I'm growing my local sale. I'm gonna have another one next week, next Friday and Saturday, and I'm excited about that because I haven't had one since March. But that was my idea for a long time, was to have a local sale because of all this excess media that I had access to. Excuse me. And so I am. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm following. That trajectory. Anyway, so losing my train of thought. Okay, so then if you're trying to go big with bulk books in bulk, you're gonna also probably want. There's gonna have to be a way to get to those books in the Gaylords. If you haven't dealt with Gaylords of books before, it's 4 feet high, and so you can grab books off the top, maybe halfway down. But once you start getting below halfway down, you're gonna have to lean way into there and try to grab them, and then bend over the Gaylord box. Sometimes rip it or tear it, and you're not going to be able to just tip it over on your own because books are so heavy. So you're probably, to make things efficient and quick and get to those books fast and get them on your level, you're probably going to want to invest in a Gaylord tipper and or dumper. And these are usually several $1,000s, unless you can find a used one maybe for cheaper. But this essentially a machine, a metal machine that you put the Gaylord in there with your forklift, of course. I don't think you can do it with the Pallet Jack, I don't think. And then it turns it around and it lifts it up and slowly dumps it onto wherever you're dumping it onto. So a lot of people do is they'll dump it onto a table or through a chute, sort of, that goes up into the Gaylord dumper, and then it'll slide down. And I'll show you a couple videos of it from this guy's Instagram account. It will slide down onto just either a table or a conveyor belt. If you have people maybe sorting and then someone further down scanning, so it'll go down. It just depends on your setup and how you're going to do it. So, a dumper or tipper. There are things called tippers as well, which I am not seen in action, but have heard of, that I think they don't necessarily dump it, but they just kind of lift it up and tip it over a bit so that you can grab it. But the idea of the dumper is that it goes, it tips it over enough so that the books they fall through the chute and down onto the table or conveyor belt. And so then you can just stand there and just, as they come, you just start going through them. And then, of course, you have to have some tables set up specifically for that, or a chute kind of comes down that's at an angle onto a table or onto a conveyor belt. So you have to invest in that stuff as well. So these are all things to consider, right, as you're growing, as you're getting into the bulk business. And then, so scanning software, right? A lot of people will just use like Scan is a popular one. Some people, you can just use your normal, your phone and scan with Scoutly or whatever. But if you're going to have other people scanning for you, you're going to have some sort of trigger set up so that they know when a book is worth keeping to send into FBA or for merchant fulfilled. Because what ends up happening is, if you have your conveyor belt or your table here in front of you, on the other side of you, you should have some other Gaylords set up so you can throw the duds, right? So these are books that you can't sell online individually. Maybe you'll have one for kids' books. It depends, right, on how you're going about it. If you're selling locally, you maybe want to separate them, right? And that's a way to try to sell off the duds. Just depends. But a lot of bulk sellers, they'll have one for kids' books, they'll have one for vintage books, they'll have one for hardcovers, they'll have one for mass market paperbacks, whatever, and then you just throw them. Or some will just be pure recycling, trash, throw that into the recycling one. And when those fill up, take them away, put another empty Gaylord. So this has got to be this whole process of doing that. So as an example, when before I got into bulk books, I actually found a source for CDs, and he was a bulk book seller, and he would get lots and lots of Gaylords of books in. And he would have a couple of workers who would sort through them and scan using Scan. And then he was only doing FBA, though, was not doing merchant fulfilled, and all the excess books that he couldn't sell in FBA, which is almost all the Gaylord, he would just have it picked up. He had a deal with thrift bookstores, or Thrift Books actually, which I was talking about. They would pick them up and pay him for them, and take them off to sell on their own. And then he also sent a lot to recycler. So the recycler would come in and just pick up his duds and go recycle them. So I would pick up boxes of CDs from him because he was not selling CDs and didn't want to deal with them. Hey. So I forgot my point of that. Oh, right. And so he had someone using Nitoscan. So he had a computer set up right there at the table. He didn't have a conveyor belt. He just had a table, and the person would just grab the books and just scan, and the software would tell immediately whether that book was worth keeping or not. And if it was worth keeping, it would go off to the side, and they would bring it over to another location where it would be listed and put into boxes. They would fill up a pallet for FBA shipment. So you have to have that set up. Excuse me. You also have to decide whether you are going to. Hey, Papa. You have to decide whether you're going to do only FBA, or whether you're going to do FBA and merchant fulfilled, or you're going to do Amazon and eBay, or you're going to open a bookstore or do a book sale. You have to decide all those things so that. Then again, this is all a process, and you go through this process as you're, getting into bulk books and deciding along the way, how to set up your sorting process and what you're going to do with all the excess books. I highly recommend doing FBA and merchant fulfilled, because there's just a lot more money to be made that way versus just doing FBA or just doing merchant fulfilled. Brenda, Ira, I have 3 children. Sourcing for books is very difficult for me. Finding Gaylord books is very difficult. I've been searching for over 2 years. Oh, thank you, Brenda. I don't know. I guess it depends on the area you live in as well, Ira. It's weird. I live in Southern California, and it's funny. I did a video a couple weeks ago about looking on Facebook Marketplace, looking on Craigslist, looking on OfferUp, looking on Let Go, Nextdoor, all these places locally to try to find books to flip during quarantine. And as I was going through, I don't know. I think it was either Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. I found a bulk source, right? This was in Bakersfield. This was in Central California, and I don't know if they're a good source, and I don't know if they have a steady supply, but they were selling Gaylords of books. And so for me, it's been just consistently looking and being persistent and getting lucky, in terms of, luck it depends on how you look at luck, but I've come across multiple sources. I found another person here near where I live that is a bulk bookseller, and I got some mixed media from them. I found someone else who doesn't do books but does, mixed media like DVDs, CDs, that type of stuff, and I bought stuff from them. I found 1, 2, 3 sources, so I don't know. I think it maybe depends on where you live. Maybe depends on what's available in your area. I just happen to live in an area that's, has a lot of people, and so there's a lot of these opportunities out there. So I don't know. It can be tough for some people. Brenda asked, are you now preferring selling books to selling DVDs and CDs? No, I don't prefer it. I just I kind of got tired of Gaylords, though. I got to be honest. I've been trying to pursue a new model of book donations, which then I end up getting other non-books as well. So because of my local sale, I'm trying to get donations. So I ran a Facebook ad for a month. It just ended this past Friday, so it was mostly in May. And I got, I think, 10 plus people that donated books to me. I just got a donation on Friday. That was my last one, which was a great one. I ended up sending out like 50 books to Amazon. So No, I wouldn't say I prefer it. I mean, I like reselling all different types of media. I'm just trying to get to a because I could continue to buy Gaylords. I just was getting overwhelmed with the Gaylords because they would take up a lot of space and they would take forever to get through, um, and it just wasn't really working out for me. So I'm gonna try the bulk model. I mean, donation model, but also I am getting, I am buying a bunch of books in like less than 3 weeks. After my sale, I'll be filling up half of my warehouse with books from a bookstore that that has that anyway that I'm talking with about running, but also they have a storage unit of books, like over 2,000 books they claim, but I think there's probably more than that. Anyway, so yeah, I may or may not buy Gaylords of media in the future. I just have to see how it goes. I'm not opposed to it, but what I essentially need to do is probably just get help with that because it's become too overwhelming for me to deal with on my own with the Gaylords. Uh, yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But I do like to do all media for sure. Great thing about books is though, even though they are larger and heavier, they're really much simpler to deal with than CDs, for instance. That's the thing is CDs are great because they're small, they're compact. They can, uh, I've sold lots, thousands of CDs on Amazon and many on eBay, and they do really well. There's a lot of valuable CDs, and there's less competition. But but anyway, so sometimes I just get burnt out on that. So I wanted to get back into books, a little more heavily into books, and try to grow my local sale. I want to rely less on online sales, and do more of my local sale and build that up to the point of where that can hopefully overtake the online sales. Not that I'm going to stop selling online; that would be ridiculous, but that would become a bigger part, basically. That's why I like the idea of doing the monthly sale, where it's just once a month, and I do a lot of sales in those 2 days, and then people anticipate the next one, and they show up and they're ready to spend money, basically. So let's see, scanning software. Right. So if you're going to do bulk and you're going to do, let's see, merchant fulfilled also, you're going to need to set up shelves for the books, have shipping supplies and a shipping station. So if you're doing FBA, clearly you just ship them out. Either if you're doing bulk, you're probably going to do it, get a bunch of like Home Depot boxes together and put them on a pallet, fill up the pallet, wrap it up, and then ship it out that way, which is much cheaper if you're doing bulk. But the merchant fulfilled books, clearly you're going to have to store them yourselves and fulfill them yourselves and ship them. So you're going to have space for that. You're going to have um, uh, shelving for that. So you have to plan all of that. And also they're going to have to be ticketed. So you're going to have to figure out a way to organize the books so that you can find them quickly when they do sell. And you have to have plenty of shipping supplies as well, right? What? Oh, right. And which I talked about briefly was managing duds. So dud management. So what are you going to do with all the books you can't sell, FBA, merchant fulfilled, or let's say eBay, if you're going to do eBay? What do you do with those? Do you recycle them? Do you do a book sale? If you have the room, do you do like I do a monthly sale? Do you do maybe a quarterly sale, biannual, annual sale, something like that? Maybe you can use buyback companies. There are book buyback companies. I'm testing out one now called Piggy Book, which I have an app for. I downloaded and I'm trying it out to hopefully be able to monetize some of my duds, and or eBay, whatever. So you have to decide how you're going to deal with all those excess books, because trust me, you will have a lot of excess books. And I'm not talking about the books that are in really too poor a condition to resell, but the books that are in good enough condition that you can sell somewhere. You just have to decide, am I going to sell them somewhere, or am I just going to keep it moving and just recycle them, get rid of them? So you have to decide all of that as well. And then, of course, if you're going to go to the bulk route and you really want to ramp it up, you're going to have to hire people. So you're going to have workers. Are they going to be employees? Are they going to be independent contractors? How many do you need to hire? How many hours a week are they going to work? How are you going to train them? All of these things as well, which I have not done just yet, but I'm on the precipice of doing. Those are things to consider. And guess what? Just like everything else, you learn as you go. So you'll learn how to hire somebody, which I still have yet to do. But once I start doing that, then I can talk about it. Then I can say, well, here's what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Here's what I learned, that type of thing. And you're responsible for people. You're responsible for others beyond yourself. When it's just a one-person show, you do everything, right? And you're responsible for everything. But then if you have even just one worker working, let's say 20, 30 hours a week, you've got to make sure you're there. Show up at this time to work, show up at 9 a.m. till 3, let's say. And you have to be there when they're there. And then you have to make sure they're doing their job correctly. You've got to pay them on time, all that stuff. You got to give them a break. If they're working, 8 hours a day full time, then you got to give them a lunch break, all that stuff. So it's all those things to consider beyond yourself when you start having workers. Payroll, right? You've got to be able to pay them as well. Let's see. So now I wanted to show, let's see this. Oh. All right. I'm trying to show, let's see. So here is a person who has a bulk book business. So as you can see here, this is their warehouse space. Now, let me show you. So here's how they palletize the books. 3 pallets of FBA books headed out this week to Amazon. So you see over here where you've got the shrink wrap. So they'll put, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so 4 high and then 3 across. So what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 stacks of 3. So they have 24 boxes here. And then they will wrap it with this wrap here, and then they'll have someone, a carrier, come and pick it up from them in palletized on a pallet. So 3 pallets, he says, with just about 4,000 books, weighing in at 3,600 pounds. The total cost to ship all 3 pallets of books was just $168. So that's a lot of money that you can save if you're going bulk. Now here is a video he shot. So now this is what I meant by he has a conveyor belt, although I don't think the conveyor belt's running because he's got a computer on there. But as you can see behind there is the pallet here. This are the Gaylord here in the dumper, and this blue part is the Gaylord dumper. So that it raises up, and then as it raises up, the books fall out here. So yeah, he's got people sorting, finding the decent books and passes it on to him, and then he scans them. And then this stack over here, I assume, actually I don't know if it's just FBA or if that's merchant fulfilled too, but this is the stack for Amazon, I presume. Yeah. And as you can see, if you watch it over here, you can see the books flying. He's tossing them. They're tossing them on this side. And on this side, there's a bunch of Gaylords, and they are throwing them either into specific Gaylords for different reasons. It could be recycling. It could be donation. It could be, what do you call it? Selling it locally. Maybe vintage books all go into one. I don't know. But that's a process he's got set up. And then let's see. I wanted to show. What did I want to show? Oh, here's the other one. So here's scanning. Here we go. Here's a better. So they dump it. It falls out into the little chute. and then they just go through it really quickly. This is sped up a lot, but yeah, so that's basically an idea of the process. And they've gotten into merchant fulfilled. So here's their setup for part of their setup for merchant fulfilled. And as you can see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They got 6 shelves. They actually have 7 up here, but they're using 6 of them. And they put the books on the spine. And then, as you can see, the little papers here, those are the little tickets that are sticking out of each book. And they have each row. So they have B1 down here, and then B2 is over here. So they know when they have a SKU attached to each book. And so it'll say B1, and then, I don't know, I guess it'll be by row maybe. And then so they'll know to go to B1, or they'll know to go to B2, or I guess over here is B3. And so they'll be able to find the section, and then they'll be able to find the shelf, and they can just pull it quickly. Yeah. And I guess he's getting more. I don't know what's happening here. Oh. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, look at all of these palletized. 4 pallets shipped and ready to go. I have a few more gailers behind that. A lot of books. So here's the setup for merchant fulfilled. Yeah, so they just sit there until they sell. The more you list them, what I found with merchant fulfilled, you got to list a lot, and you got to have repricing going on. Otherwise, you're not going to sell that many. He says over 1,500 MF books listed, so that's a lot. So this is their warehouse. Look at the stacks of books that they're going through over here. I'm assuming putting into, the woman over here is doing it as well, putting them into, listing them. And then I forgot what this was. Oh, so they grade the books here. Oh, okay. So here. So let me tell you. Whoops. So essentially they will get the books. Once they've sorted, once they've scanned, they found the books that they want to list, then they'll take them over here, and then they will grade them, so that makes it quicker to list them. So basically what that means is they will say, okay, acceptable, good, very good, like new. And so they will grade them there, and they'll put them in the different stacks based upon the condition, and so that when they go scan them in, they can do, okay, all these books are going to be acceptable, so they have their condition notes set up for acceptable, and as they scan them in, whatever software they use, I use AccelerList, you can use ScanLister, there's all different types. What's the other one? Forgot. But anyway, and they scan them in, so okay, all acceptables are done. Okay, let's change the condition note to good, and they have all the stacks of good, and then they scan in all the good ones. Okay, let's change it to very good, etc., like new. And so it's faster. I do the same thing with AccelerList when I'm here. So here's the scanner I use, and I just put the book right underneath. It's plugged in, and it's just continuously running. So I just put the barcode underneath it, and it immediately just scans it into AccelerList and populates it. And all I do is, because I already have the condition notes set up, all I do is, which I don't know if it's what they do, they might do something different, but I just put in the price, and that's it. Hit the button, to send it to the queue or whatever to be listed, or for FBA to be sent in, and keep going to the next book. So you can do it really fast. As long as you have the condition notes set up and you've graded them ahead of time, it can be quick. So here's them grading it. So they look through it and make sure that, you could see that he took out the little stickers. See right here, he takes out the stickers from this book right now. See all that? The stickers on the table. So he took all the stickers out there. And he says, so check for any tears in cover, back, or spine. Skim through the book for any missing pages, highlighting or underlining. Yeah, it makes sense, right? So, and that's a better way to do it, I feel, too, even though it might take a little bit more time versus just, oh, this looks fine, because then you end up selling it, and then people complain, and your feedback rating goes down, and it's just not good business either. So, always want to look, you can do it real quick, right? If there's little tabs in there, stickers, you can just take those out. If pages are dog-eared, well, I recommend folding them back. I'd prefer that. Um, Clearly, if there's any major damage that you didn't notice before, then you're probably not going to be able to sell that book, or you shouldn't probably list that book for sale on Amazon. Um, and You should be careful with that. But yeah, grading is really important. Uh, Whether you're doing 30 books or whether you're doing 2,000 books, you should definitely do that as a way for quality control, but also to speed up the process of listing your books. So this is an example of someone who has I would say it's a bulk business, but it's probably, on the spectrum of bulk businesses, it's probably on the smaller side. Um, and probably growing towards a mid-size bulk business as he ramps up his merchant fulfilled side of things, and sending out 4 pallets of books to FBA. That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books. But anyway, so that's the example of that. You can check him out on Instagram. So yeah, guys, this was videos about basically components of a book business, and whether or not you want to do it. You have to weigh a lot of things. Can you find enough books in bulk to start this business? Do you have the capital to slowly work your way up? You can start small and you can build up your income and your business, and then reinvest it in your business and grow it even more if it's what you want to do. If you want to just keep it to yourself and just be a solo bookseller, then you're not going to go this route, of course. Although I do know of people that still do everything by themselves, and they do bulk books. I knew of a guy who I haven't seen or heard of from a long time here on YouTube. I don't remember where he lived. It was either Midwest or East Coast, and he had his own warehouse space, and he would do bulk books. He would go through a lot of Gaylords a day. I think he was working like 10 hours a day or something, and he was sending in a lot of books, but he was doing all by himself to support his family, and it was pretty backbreaking work. I know he'd done it for years. Last time I heard from him a couple years ago. I don't know if he's still doing it. So it's definitely possible to do it all by yourself, but it's just a lot of work. If you hired even one person to help you sort, let's say they just helped you, I don't know, list or whatever, took away one of those, which is what I'm dealing with now, right? Is as I see in my warehouse that my the amount of stuff I need to list on eBay is growing as I get more book donations and as I go through all of that. And I see, wow, if I had someone listing, I would already have all those listed right now. I'd have all of those 70 items or 60 items or whatever listed, and I would just continue to get more stuff for this person to list if I would get someone to help me out with that, which I'm feeling more and more like I need to do, because that's really the only way, I'm going to grow. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. I really do. Sawyer Flips. If you don't do Amazon, good question. Is it still worth doing books heavily if you don't do Amazon? So you're talking about, Sawyer, are you talking about just online sales? As in, like you would do just eBay? Or what? Because so if you're just doing online sales, yeah, I recommend you've got to do Amazon if you're going to do books heavily, unless you're talking about yeah, that's a good idea, Brenda. So it's definitely, if you're going to go into books heavily, you should definitely sell on Amazon. Yeah. Brenda says you could pay them by how many books they list into Amazon or other platforms. You could 50 cents a book. They can do it from their home. Yeah, I know. I've thought about different ways, right? Like dropping off books. Yeah, dropping off books at their house, and then they list them and ship them. I have thought about that. I just prefer the idea of them coming into my warehouse so that I have more control over it. And since I already have a warehouse, someone even just working 3 hours a day kind of a thing, 15 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours at most a week, listing things for me. For me, it would initially be for eBay. And then once they got really good at eBay, I could teach them how to list on Amazon as well, just because eBay is much more time consuming because you need to take the photos, and then I have templates. However, it's still more time consuming than Amazon any day of the week. So that is the thing that I dislike the most about selling online, is listing on eBay, and then secondly, listing on Amazon. So those would probably be, like, I don't mind shipping so much, but the listing I'm not a big fan of. So that would probably be the first thing that I would like someone to take off of my hands. I mean, the idea of creating, or having items to sell on eBay and on Amazon, and then just passing them off to someone to list for me is a great idea. It's an idea I like. But anyway, so yeah, guys, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. This is day 30. What is it? Day 37 of Flippin Live. Flippin Live is the live program. We've been going live during quarantine for over a month now, for 37 straight days, every day of the week, including the weekends. So if you are new to the show, be sure and tune in tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time to 8 a.m. I got to go feed my kids right now. And I appreciate you watching. So let me play the music to get on out of here.
Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin' live. We're gonna strive, we're here to learn and gonna earn. Flippin' live, flippin' live, flippin'
Yeah, Sawyer.
live.
I assume you mean selling online. Yes, absolutely. You should sell on Amazon if you're going to do bulk books, because otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to do just eBay or local flips. You could, I guess, but there's going to be so much more. There's going to be so much money to be made through FBA or through Merchant Fulfilled with your books that you don't want to miss out on that. So, yeah, you really should do that. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. And more importantly, keep safe, guys. Stay safe out there. Hopefully you have a good start of the week. You find some books or other stuff to resell. You can do some listing, etc. Get some sales. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Say bye. Say bye.